Hi and welcome to this week's Background Fundamentals. Well, week one we had a supervisor, had a practical background. Last week in week two we had someone who obviously has a very strong digital background and a huge amount of experience. This week we're talking to Rob Coleman, who's at Animal Logic, used to be at ILM, and he's coming at it from the point of view of being an animation supervisor. Now I'd almost hesitate to say that we'd call Rob a director, but he's not. He works with directors in animated films such as the Lego films. But in addition to that, he has worked in the ILM context as a character animator, producing characters that then go into, obviously, live-action plates such as Yoda. So we thought we'd sit down with Rob at this point so that we'd have some perspective as we were trying to move around. We will be swinging back to more traditional visual effects supervisors as we go on. In particular, next week we'll head back to ILM to talk to some of the guys that Rob worked with. In fact, hired Rob. He was employee number 9, I think, at ILM for the animation department, as you'll hear. This is a real treat, this interview. I just can't tell you how much I was looking forward to doing it and how right I was to look forward to it, because it is really like a masterclass in what it takes to make animation work, what it takes to run an animation team, and how to get the best up on the screen. Rob, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
I was just fascinated to know, when was the first time that you were officially kind of the supervisor, be it the animation supervisor, the visual effects supervisor, that title, that you felt like you were the guy? What was that sort of first moment?
It was actually, I got a dry run on Dragonheart, which would have been 1995, 96. In that time frame, James Strauss, who was the animation supervisor on that film, unfortunately fell ill and wasn't able to do the job for a while. So ILM asked me to step up and supervise, and it was daunting, but it didn't last that long. So I very quickly realized I don't have a whole bunch of the skill sets that I need to be able to do that job. But the first time I actually did it was on the first Men in Black, which would have been 97, if I think back.
What is that skill set that you thought, I'm sure you did a great job, but what is the skill set you thought you didn't have?
Well, the one I didn't have was being able to articulate what is working and what isn't working in another person's shot. I was a senior animator and I was self-critical, as we all are, and was listening to input coming from the director of the movie and from James in that case on Dragonheart, and I was able to do that work. But I found it was a completely different thing to be sitting at the front of the room looking at other people's work, and they may have spent 1 hour on it or 1 day or 1 week on it, and being able to articulate in a creative way and in a supportive way how they might go forward with fixing their shot or making their shot better. And I stumbled and I didn't have the words for it, and I realized that I really hadn't ever considered that. I had always just allowed it to wash over me as an animator, but hadn't really connected the dots to, well, if you're going to be the supervisor on the show, you need to have that. So I started doing a whole bunch of homework, and that meant looking at their work before we went into the dailies. So I'd already had an opinion and already started formulating how I would go about it. I was also very truthful about when I didn't know how to fix a shot. And that, I think, earned some respect from the other animators, because I'd been plucked up above some of my colleagues we'd all been there at the same amount of time. And then it was also learning the skills of presenting other people's work to the director, which I'd never had to do before.
There is a sense of what am I looking at, isn't there? I mean, you can be looking at something and you could say, well, this doesn't look at all good. Well, it's not a final, so it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And then determining what comments are even relevant. You could spend a whole lot of time talking to someone, they'd sit there respectfully nodding until they said, but that's not what we're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. And well, you actually reminded me, because one of the things I learned pretty quickly, thankfully, was allowing the artist to tell me where are they in their work. We're looking at your work, it's a work in progress, we all know that, but what are you happy about your work where you are right now? What do you already know that you want to do? Allow them to tell you that, or share that with you before you go and just hammer them with, well, the feet aren't locking to the ground and I don't feel the weight and the face isn't there, and they then turn to you and say, I haven't even started the face animation. And so you realize quickly, like, okay, on my best days, I need to say, okay, so-and-so, Sally, where are you right now? Oh, well, I'm happy with that, and that, but this part isn't working, and I actually could use your help, Rob. I'm lost in this bit of the performance. Then, as a supervisor or a director, you're like, oh, okay, great, let me help you in that area. And it becomes a much better relationship.
That's one of the things I really want to talk to you about, because you have this amazing position that's different from, say, a straight visual effects supervisor, in that a lot of your work is both this technically, as you gave the example, the feet aren't on the ground, it doesn't have weight, whatever. Okay, but then there's the performance. Like, this is technically great, but emotionally, am I like feeling it? Where is this in the story? I was wondering if you could talk about those two things, because it is quite the directing side of animation as much as it is the visual effects supervision of whether it sort of works technically.
It is, and I think the longer I've been doing this, it becomes more and more and more about the acting and less and less and less about the technical. And I think I've grown, and certainly the team around me has grown in understanding and connecting to the reality of we are actors, we're creating performances with these characters, and whether it be a Lego minifig, or it be Yoda, or it be a big huge dinosaur. We want the audience to believe that that character is alive and thinking and emoting, and that the audience feels empathy for that character up on the screen. So over the years, it did start off technically, go to frame 17, okay, the shoulder needs to drop down a little bit more and we need to feel a bit more weight there. Or, oh, we can't get that skin to react the way we want, so we're going to change the pose so that we can get it to work technically. That has gone away, thankfully, over the last many years, and it's now more about looking at the performance up on the screen and saying, do I believe in this performance? Does the character feel like it's in this world, whether it be live action or fully animated? And that's where we spend the vast majority of our time discussing the work from an acting point of view.
There's also the context that's super important here, right? Because it might be a great scene, but it just doesn't sit with what went in and came out, or even just the tone at that point.
Yeah, or how it sits with the other animators who are animating the same character in the same sequence of the same movie. One of the biggest challenges that I recognized early on was, people use terms like, it's like herding cats. But you've got, let's say I've got a team of 15 animators, all animating the same character. Well, each person comes with a different skill, acting skills, creative skills, technical skills. They approach the work differently. They're all individuals. And as a supervisor, obviously, you're trying to pull one cohesive performance out of those 15 individuals who have different abilities and understandings of how that character is. Additionally, you have the director as well, who has an idea of how the character is. So as a supervisor, you're in there really trying to just help the group find the character. And some of it comes along because someone comes up with a really great piece of performance that I hadn't even thought of, director didn't even ask for, animator has an idea, and pitches an idea in the what we'll call the development phase, or even the shot phase. And then once again, I think on my best days, I say, that's awesome. It's nothing like what I thought I was going to get, but let me take it to the director and pitch it to them and say, truthfully, what is this? So, Sally came up with this idea, and I think it's awesome, and I think it fits really well in your film, and then have a discussion about that. Director agrees, doesn't agree, or if it says somewhere in between. Being able to take that back to the team energizes the team, obviously, because they are part of the whole creative process. You want them engaged, and you want them putting a little bit of their humanity into the performance, because it'll just come up on the screen.
Okay, so I think you know me well enough to know that one of my favourite things you ever did was a cloak moving aside and a Yoda going for a lightsaber. It was just a spectacular piece of animation. But in that moment, I was, of course, totally there with, oh boy, this is going to be great, he's going to kick ass. The point was, there's some point earlier in the process, be it at a storyboard or whatever, however far you want to go back, that there wasn't the humanity. For you, when does it become alive? Can you see it alive from the first scene, or is it like there's some point halfway through the animation where you go, okay, now we've got the face, now it comes alive?
I would say it comes alive pretty early in my mind's eye, but it takes a long time to technically get there and get the model and the rig and the animators working with it to see it come to life. It also starts with the early conversations with the director. What are they seeing in their mind's eye? And then if it's a talking character, what does the voice actor bring to it? So I may have a spark of an idea, and it will change over time as those different influences affect the path of that character into existence. The happiest I am is when I tend to use analogies, and one of them is the playing field. I see my role is to create the playing field, the context of where this character is in the movie, in the scene, in this shot, to the team of animators, and then allow them to play on that field. If they stray too far, meaning the character becomes too broad in its performance, or it doesn't feel like the physicality is really there, then I'll gently push them back onto the field. If the field's big enough, they're going to come with nice surprises for me, and then Lucas used to talk about it being Christmas morning for animation dailies. We would come with ideas, and his analogy was opening presents. He loves seeing the new shots. And that truly is the most rewarding time, because you've created an environment where you're not shackling an animator down to, on frame 17, the elbow must be here. It's more like, I want to feel that this character is about to go into a big battle. I want to feel what it felt like to look at a Western and see a gunslinger push back his duster.
But let's just hit on that for a second, because there was no way you could have known how well, I mean, maybe I'll give you more credit perhaps, but it just felt like that was a risk, that there was an actual risk with the performance of the character.
Oh, yeah.
And it totally worked. I mean, it just so worked. But there must have been a point on paper that certainly I and a bunch of other people would have gone, let's see, because it may look odd.
Well, in this particular case, you're absolutely right. He has his robes. He had his lightsaber on his left-hand side, and it actually came out of a practical thing, which was he had short little arms, and it looked silly. It was Tim Harrington, I believe, who animated that. Tim was trying to get it to look, and it just looked awkward and silly. And I'll give Tim the credit. Tim pushed the duster back to show us the lightsaber, because George Lucas wanted that reveal. And then it was Tim who came up with the idea for the lightsaber to come up. And that's one of those, I actually got goosebumps. It's one of those moments where I didn't tell him to do that.
Right.
I didn't pitch him that idea. He was trying to solve a technical problem, and that it looked awkward and it didn't look as powerful as it needed to, and he came up with that idea. And we all just went, we have to do that.
How much does the physical performance of the voice actor feed you and what you take through to the animators? Is it immaterial or vital?
Oh, it's vital. Right. It's absolutely vital. The voice actor, I really feel that they're obviously the first people to put the stake in the ground about that character. So to me, it starts with, I want to see them performing. Do they talk like this and crunch their face up? Do they move around when they're standing at the lectern? Will the director let them move around?
I think I just recognized that character.
Do you? What? I'm a Tidarian. I'll videotape them. Now, that said, I won't always show that video to the animators, because some of the great actors I've worked with, and a couple, Frank Oz does Yoda's voice, obviously, but he has to kind of really twist his neck, and he tends to have his arms straight. I'm not sure. He told me he had to sort of get his throat in a certain space for it to come out as Yoda. When he's doing it on set, it sounds like Grover, but when he's doing it for us, or did for us on the movies, he had to do this thing.
But you're saying he's doing that not to find the character, but to find the voice.
To physically get the voice to come out of him.
Right.
Well, having a man doing this is not going to help me with a performance. We did record Sean Connery, for example, for Dragonheart. Well, he stood at the lectern looking through his reading glasses and barely moved. There was nothing good there for the animators to pull from. So in those cases...
Can I just say that, by the way, the performance you guys got on Dragonheart, I mean, is not given enough credit. That was just sensational for its day.
Yeah, for its day, it was
unbelievable character animation.
Well, thank you.
I mean,
we were very proud of it, and then a little bit sad that not too many people saw that movie.
Well, yeah, but that's my point in raising it. I mean, it was just an amazing piece of character animation.
Well, in that particular case, it was very interesting because so they had designed this beautiful-looking dragon, and he had a very hard, scaly forehead. And then James and I and some of the senior animators started doing reference on Connery. Well, I can't do it, but Connery has independent control over his eyebrows. And so much of what he does is that, it's this, well, Moneypenny, and then he'll go like this. So we cut together what I have now started to call, or have been calling for a little while, a spirit reel, which is the spirit of the character. So we pulled from Hunt for Red October and the James Bond films and a bunch of his films, cut it all together, had stills up in the studio, and then realized, well, our dragon had no movability in his forehead. So the animation department actually pushed back and said, to be able to create that performance, we're going to need to lift that up, because it's so much of Connery's in there. It's also that he talks out of one side of the mouth and then he'll go to the other side. Oh, yes, I am the last one. He'll do something like that. So we wanted the dragon to do that. So get back to your question, I want the animators to be listening to the sound, and I want, if the character has a lisp, obviously I want them animating with the tongue so we can see that. Or do they talk out of one side, like Watto or the dragon? With Emmett, we listened to Chris Pratt. We did videotape them, but we didn't actually hand that to them because it was so graphic Lego guy compared to Chris Pratt, that there wasn't a corollary, but there were things with his hands that Pratt would do when he was talking that you do see in Emmett. So it wasn't necessarily a facial thing, but it was a body thing. You'll get little indicators from that.
So from my point of view, a real compliment I can pay you is that I didn't see the actors in the characters. In other words, I've seen other animated films that you weren't involved in, and I like to hear the voice of a character, and I know exactly who that actor is, and it's almost like, well, I guess it just breaks suspension of disbelief. But no matter that Sean Connery's voice is the most well-known kind of voice of its class, I still see a dragon, which I think is really important. But does that ever feature for you in terms of your thinking that I need to be this character because the actor is meant to be acting the character, not being themselves?
Yes, that's a great question. I don't want to just make a carbon copy of the actor themselves. I don't want the audience to just say, oh, that's that actor. I want to listen to the voice because they are playing a character, and then allow the animated character to also come alive. And that's a big part of that is obviously working with the animation crew with the direction from the director and saying, well, to the director, how do you see him moving? What is he thinking about? Where has he been before? Which goes back to what we talk about in acting. What's the backstory? Where has he been just before this scene? What's on his mind? And then listening to that voice, and I always tend to close my eye because that's what I do when I'm listening to it for real, and just focus on the voice. And it's less about the face. It's more about, I'm just thinking about it now, I'm looking for the mannerisms or the tics, but I'm not trying to copy it frame by frame. I'm trying to get an indication out of that actor. Are they someone like me who talks with their hands a lot, or are they more stationary, or do they do more things with their head and their eyes and the way they move? That's what I want the animators to kind of pull on and pull into their animation.
There is a really interesting correlation, though, between hand movement and speech, as one knows if you've ever described a spiral staircase without trying to use your hands, right? It's just like, it goes around.
Yeah, it goes around.
But it's not arbitrary. I mean, it has to be the right beat.
Oh, yeah.
There's a kind of a cognitive disconnect, even though you can't put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And yet we tend to talk about facial animation, and it's almost as if we imagine that we get them moving around with their arms and then we stick a face on later. But they have to work in sync, don't they?
They absolutely do. And you actually remind me of, I see it a lot in student reels that come in. And it's something I've called vaudeville animation, which is overacting. I'm going over there. Let's do this now. Hey, I'm waiting for a friend at the bus stop. Let me check my watch. And it's an interesting thing because it's been happening for decades now. I've been seeing this same kind of thing. And what I think I'm seeing is people who are trying to be animated, and they may even videotape themselves, and they do the performance, and then they do their animation, and it looks just like their performance. And what I've been trying to encourage young animators more recently is go and find animation, or go and find live action that you love with a trained actor in a movie that you love, and try and distill what it is about that, whether it be the stillness or the motion or the acting choices, which I'm trying to get them to look at. When did Robert De Niro do that hand motion? When did Charlize Theron look up like that? What is the timing? What is that connection? Why do we feel a connection with that character at that moment? The emotion, even though it's nonverbal, what is it about that? Get away from shooting. If you're a great actor, great, or one of your colleagues is, sure. And we do shoot ourselves here at the studio, but I'm very cognizant of there's good acting, there's bad acting, and we need to focus on the good stuff.